A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thought. He loses touch with reality. A good servant, but a bad master, and lives in a world of illusion. And all so-called civilized people have increasingly become crazy and self-destructive.
Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, campers. I am Counselor Ken.
And I'm Counselor Ashley.
And let's talk horror.
So today, campers, we are going to talk about 1980's Friday the 13th versus 2009's Friday the 13th. We're going to give you things that we like from both of them and verse them against each other.
Now, before we actually get started with this, we do want to say this was very hard, especially in the versus aspect, because they are two completely different films.
Yeah.
We'll get into why in a little bit, but we just wanted to let you know the versus aspect, we kind of had to grasp at straws a little bit. But in order to verse them off, we got to start talking about the OG. So let's talk about Friday the 13th, 1980. So there's obviously been a world of controversy surrounding 1980's Friday the 13th, written by Victor Miller, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, and there's been a fight for rights for this movie for a very long time. We're finally getting a brand new TV show this year. It was just announced at the time of recording that Sean S. Cunningham is going to be rebooting the film, but in order to do that, it had to start somewhere. So we're going to talk about some things we like and dislike. It went, what? In the original. So you want to start us off, my love?
Yeah, so let's just begin at the beginning. We're all singing Kumbaya and
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so 80s and it's funny.
It is, and this is something that I still think holds up today. When it comes to being a camp movie, it's hard to top this one, and along with that is the score to this film. Victor Miller's been very open about the fact that he wanted to use a lot of Halloween and also Psycho influences in Friday the 13th. And the score that really comes across, you could see a lot of stuff that was, influenced by Psycho. But I really think the Friday the 13th score holds up on its own, and it's very good. I mean, the opening title card sequence is fantastic for the score alone. So a very big fan of the score we are of Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Let's talk about Crazy Ralph. He's trying to get them to stay away.
Yeah, and I love the fact that we often forget about this now because the movie's from 1980. But, Crazy Ralph was like a red herring almost. Like, you almost think Crazy Ralph is the killer in this movie for a little bit. And one of my favorite characters of all time of the Friday the 13th franchise, going to Camp Blood, ain't ya? Yeah, I love Crazy Ralph. One scene that makes us laugh, though, is this scene right here where you're watching her walk up, and the point of view of the person that's the killer, and at this point we don't know who it is, it's a whodunit, is just watching them, and they walk right by them. Like, you totally would have seen that person.
Like, how did you not?
Like, how did you miss that person standing right there next to you?
That's funny. So we also get the drowning prank, which is a lot like the Sandlot prank.
Yeah, this is, when we're watching this, and I'm like, I could totally see where the Sandlot got this. I could see where Squints got his idea to kiss Wendy Peppercorn when he was, he totally did a Friday the 13th number on her.
For sure.
So that's something very light, something very funny. Let's talk about something that's not funny, and that's letting somebody borrow your pet and then you fucking killing it.
Why would you be so,
This isn't fake, guys.
No,
that's
is
a real snake.
Why would you do that to, your friend that allowed you to borrow it for your movie?
Yeah, they didn't tell him either.
Let's just chop it up.
Yeah. Hey, can we borrow your snake for a scene? Yeah, can I get my snake back? Funny you should mention that.
Jason got him.
It's just fucked up, man. I blurted, obviously, because even though it's a movie, that's a real death, guys. And I know it's a snake, and I'm not a huge fan of snakes, but
I hate snakes, but it's still somebody's pet.
Yeah,
somebody
pet.
loved it.
That's fucked up.
That is.
So I had to throw that up real quick. How fucked up that was.
How about this? We get a little bit more Crazy Ralph.
In my opinion, one of the best lines in the whole film that isn't delivered by Mrs. Voorhees, which we'll see later on. But like I said, I love Crazy Ralph. I love that line delivery. Now, something I don't love, I love practical effects.
Yeah.
But when they look this shoddy, I don't know. Maybe you could have just did some thunder rumbling in the background. That would have cued us in that there was a storm coming.
Turn light on.
Yeah, it was a little too much. You know what I mean? I get it was 1980.
Yeah.
They were filming outside. They had a limited time. I understand, I respect it. But now watching this in 2023 doesn't hold up as well as it did back then.
So, you want to play a little strip Monopoly? Do you know how long it would take just to get off of, an item of clothing? Like,
You said, do you know how long it would take to get off?
well, it would take a long time because, a sock here, a sock there.
Baltic Avenue, shit. And I agree with you. When we were watching this, I haven't watched this movie in a couple years, so we went into this completely clean, and I was just like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But something that does make me laugh is this.
Bill?
Now, listen, the way that she just goes, Bill! Like, I one of our best friends ever, a huge contributor to the channel. This channel wouldn't exist.
How every time I see him.
Yeah.
It's like, Bill!
Bill! That's how we say it every time we see the guy. So we're watching this again, and we couldn't stop laughing at this part because it reminded us of Bill. And if you guys ever see Something Metal, Bill Brayman, in the chats or anything, just know that he had a huge, huge hand in creating this channel and all the things you see on this channel. So special shout out to you, Bill!
We love you, Bill. There is a lot of fillers in there. She's making coffee. Takes forever. We know how to make coffee.
Forever.
They have the cop scene where they're looking for Ralph. That's
Unnecessary.
It's unneeded.
Yeah.
Where she's blocking up the door to, get away from the villain.
Listen, like, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You're blocking the door. You don't want the bad person getting in, but in rewatching it, it's like, wow, they took a long time on this scene.
Yeah.
We
didn't need all that. No,
right.
For sure.
Well, what we're talking about, things that are crazy, when they throw her through the window, which is obviously a stuntman.
Her.
Yeah, obviously a stuntman getting thrown through the window. But I love how she's dead and she's still moving. Like, look, I know it looks crazy. Even now, we're looking at it now, we're dissecting it. They didn't expect us to do all this back in 1980.
Right.
But I do love watching moments like this, where you can see that it's the stuntman, where you can see that she's dead, but she's still moving around a little bit. She's still breathing. Like, these little tiny things, I think, really, showcase that time. I love those. I'm not a huge fan of, like, lighting up for lightning, but little things like that, I just think those are a lot of fun.
So then we get our introduction to Mrs. Voorhees.
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
One of the all-time greatest villains ever. I'm going to throw that out there. One of the greatest villains of all time. And when you see her, Betsy Palmer is just a beautiful lady.
Betsy Palmer is amazing. She is a woman that knows exactly what she wants. She isn't going to put up with shit, and she's going to tell you exactly how she feels. Yeah. And I admire her so much.
I mean, she has maybe 10 minutes of screen time in this movie. And she's, she's just so iconic. And, we obviously get her reasoning for why, we get to see little Jason drowning in the water, which I think, it's sad watching this little boy out there drowning in the lake. But, we're getting cued into who Jason is, her son that drowned at this lake. So I do feel like that is obviously a very important part of the film.
And then we get Pamela's reveal.
You never paid any attention. Look what you did to him. Look what you did to him.
So now we know.
Now
she's a badass.
We know.
She's the one that's been doing it this whole time. When she first shows up, you think maybe she's a beacon of light.
Yeah. Like, she's here to help me. Someone's after me.
Right.
It's me, bitch. I'm after you because you are, because of my son.
Well, I do want to say real quick, what the best way to stop Pamela Voorhees is? If you throw yarn and a pencil, maybe a piece of Velcro at her.
Did she just throw a ball of yarn? Like, what the hell?
That's a Voorhees weakness. Everybody knows that. It's in the book. If you throw yarn and pencils and like zippers and stuff like that, you're going to be fine. A little piece of Velcro, a piece of tape, you'll be just fine.
She did look terrified, so,
She did. She was absolutely scared of the yarn.
Absolutely. And then we learn why Friday the 13th is so special. Today is his birthday.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Exactly. What I love about this is in the OG, the 13th is actually an important day for a reason. It was his birthday. That's why she's come back to the lake this day. So those are some of the things that we liked, disliked, and went, what? About the original. Now let's talk about 2009's reboot and a half of Friday the 13th. All right, guys. Now we are going to go balls to the wall and talk about the reboot of Friday the 13th done in 2009.
So when we have to talk about how it is a reboot, it's not just the first one. It's a mix of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
You know, you get the reveal of Miss Voorhees in the beginning, and then Jason, he just has his sack on, and he finds his mask. Like, you have the mix of the 3.
Yeah. They took essentially their favorite parts from 1, 2, and 3 and put them all together into one film. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, the whole reason you start this movie is a bunch of kids going out trying to get some pot. Somebody told them about this big pot farm, so they're going out there to steal all the pot. And I love his face when he actually finds the pot. Like, he's taking a piss, and then he holds that glow stick, and he's just like, oh my God, I found you. It just reminds me of being a teenager. Like, I would have shit myself if I found all that pot when I was a teenager.
So we have Whitney. They are going through the stuff at Jason's, I guess, cabin.
Yeah.
And they find a locket, and her boyfriend says, it looks a lot like you.
You should keep this.
You should keep this. So she keeps it.
I wonder if that'll come in handy later. Now, listen, okay, I love the first 25 minutes of this movie. And obviously we get the almost kill right before the title card. Look at this shit, you guys. She would have totally died. There's no way he was going to miss her. With all that momentum, there's no way he would have stopped. That is one thing about this movie that I watched. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how did she not die? That's ridiculous. But it's the old adage, if you didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Right. And like I mentioned, we get Sackhead Jason again. My least favorite. I do not like Sackhead Jason.
That's true. She doesn't. And it's funny because when we went and seen this in the theater when it first came out, and I was freaked at this point. I was like, oh, we're going to get Sackhead Jason in this movie. This is awesome. Because when we seen the first initial trailers, I'm like, oh, a Friday the 13th remake, but I'm seeing Jason. I was kind of confused. I like the direction they went, but that's a conversation for later on in the video. I will say that if they had made the first 25 minutes of this its own short film, I would have been fine with that too. The first 25 minutes of this movie is great, even though I don't really I can't really think of any character, maybe 2 characters in the whole film that I actually enjoy. Most of the characters in this movie suck. I hate almost oh my gosh, maybe it's because I'm old, maybe I'm old now, but the first 25 minutes are fucking awesome.
Yeah. And then we get this line.
Came about that close to hitting the start button on a whoop-ass machine, boy.
We both laughed so hard rewatching this.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny moments in this movie for sure.
Well, this kid's like 120 pounds soaking wet.
Right.
Talking to Jared Padalecki like that. Like, hey, you almost started the button on a whoop-ass machine there, boy. Like, what? What are you going to do?
Right.
Jared Padalecki could literally hold that kid's head and he'll do the swings like that. That's what I think of when I see this part. But one good thing about this kid, he's the reason that Jason finds his mask. And, obviously...
It's always some weird little twit is the reason that...
Stop it. You stop. I'm wearing my Friday the 13th 3 shirt right now, and I will be damned if you're going to talk about Shelley in that manner.
No, I'm sorry.
Jason and his hockey mask are iconic because of Shelley.
At least Shelley isn't feeling up on mannequins.
Yeah.
And...
You remember when you took my virginity?
Yeah.
God, that guy was fucking weird.
Yeah. And then we find out that Whitney is still alive. So I don't know how I feel about it, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I mean, Jason doesn't take survivors,
One thing I'll say about this Jason is he is scary as fuck, though.
He is very, very
this
scary.
Jason is over the top. Like, you got the part where he's like flipping the boats and he turns on the spotlights when they're out at the lake. Like, he totally is a badass throughout this whole movie. And I like the fact, like I said, if you're rebooting the whole franchise at this point, because you're doing 1, 2, and 3, this is not your dumb mope around Jason. This Jason is fucking smart.
He really is.
He is smart. He is dangerous. I mean, we even get a shot of him sharpening his machete. He's sitting there. He's sharpening his machete. It's a great moment. So it's one of those things where this is not your Jason. This is a guy that's been out there surviving. He's set traps. I love the fact that he kidnapped her because, while he is intelligent, I think he still has that child's mind.
Yeah.
And so he sees his mom in her.
So what about Jason's necklace?
When he finds the necklace, like when he's going to kill her when they're down there, he sees it.
Yeah.
And he holds it and he looks at it, and you get that feeling in your heart of, he even though he's a big, intelligent oaf, he still has love for his mom. That's something that really means a lot to him. Now, we couldn't talk about this movie without talking about how hard Ashley and I laughed at this moment right here.
Hi, my name is Trent. My daddy bent me over this chair and beat me when I was little, so you need to fix it.
So before that actually happens, they're in the house and he's taking a drink after he had let the shot be on fire for a while and it burned his mouth and he fell and broke the chair. And just me and Ashley rewound that shit like 10 times. He's like, oh, well, my name's Trent. My dad used to bend me over this chair and spank me. So now I gotta fix it. Like I talked a little bit ago. Chewie and Lawrence are the saving grace of this film for me. I'm just gonna throw that out there. They are the saving grace of the film for me, in my opinion.
Speaking of Lawrence, Jason, he pretty much just uses him as bait. He's out there screaming help, and they're all in there like, well, he's done for. Like, we're not going to go out there and help
Jared
him.
Padalecki's like, nope.
Just stay in here. Like, he's gone. He's gone.
And it's sad, man, because you really like Chewie and Lawrence.
Yeah.
Like, they're the only two characters that have some semblance of being a real person. Like, there's a part earlier in the movie where Chewie is talking, or Lawrence, I'm sorry, he's talking about how he's starting a record label, so he needs to have service when they're out at the cabin. And the girl's like, oh, what kind of music? Rap? And he's like, oh, what? Because I'm black? I'm black, so I can't like Green Day? She's like, I'm sorry, that was presumptuous. Yeah. What kind of music is it? And he's like, rap.
Yeah.
Like, I love these two characters because they actually bring, I feel like they're the most realistic.
Yeah. Every
other character in this movie, including my dude Jared Padalecki, who I love so much, is so cliche and over the top that it's not even realistic. So I do love that. Lawrence uses bait. That is something that's very scary that Jason does. Another thing is this shot right here. From a cinematography standpoint, my favorite shot of any of the Friday the 13th movies, to watch it go and move inside the house.
It is really cool looking, for sure, yeah.
Great shot. I love this shot.
And then we get Jenna. She actually dies. Like, I think it was kind of a shock because you felt like she was going to be the final girl.
Yeah.
And then he kills her, and it's like, oh shit, she's not our final girl.
I think we all, like, when we see that, we're like, what the fuck? Like, that girl's not going to die. That's our final girl.
She's our final girl, right? And we were wrong.
They subverted our expectations.
We didn't see it coming.
Very well. So I do love that as well. So there's a lot that we love about Friday the 13th, 2009. There's a lot we love about 1980, but there are some similarities between the two. So now we're going to break down what we think of each one and which one is our favorite of the two. All right, guys. So now the deciding factor. Which one of these films do we actually like more? But first, let's talk about some scenes that are, similar or different enough that we can actually talk about them. So in the OG, you have the opening, all the kids singing, and then the two go upstairs and they're making out.
Yeah.
And you see the one guy get stabbed off screen.
We weren't doing anything.
Yeah, and you don't know who it is, obviously, because you get the POV shot. And then the girl screaming, so she obviously dies. Or in the remake, you have the 25-minute opening where it's just completely insane, balls to the wall action. Which one do you prefer of the two?
I'm going to have to go with the remake on this one because, like you said, it's balls to the wall action. Jason's just going ham on these kids. Yeah. And I love it, especially where she's in the sleeping bag above the fire. And she's like, get me out. And she's burning. Like, oh, I love that. I think it looks so good.
I'm also going to go with the remake. There's a lot that I dislike about the remake. I hate every character almost. But this opening is awesome. I don't like the characters in the opening. I don't like the sex scene, how long it takes. And I'm thinking there's someone, a lot of this remake, I think, is overhyped. And I'm going to be honest with you. But I do love Jason every time he's on screen in the remake. He is a bad motherfucker. So
he really is.
I am going to go with the intro of the remake on this as well. Now, let's talk about the killer. In the OG, you have a whodunit. You have no idea who the killer is. Or in the remake, we know it's Jason. From the beginning, we know it's Jason. Which one do you prefer?
I like to be surprised, and I love how you find out that it was his mom, how it was Pamela Voorhees. I think that's smart, Right. Even people still, like, they have heard of it, but they still think Jason is the killer in the original, if they've never actually seen the movie. So I think that the OG.
I'm going to go with the OG as well. I mean, I think it would have been a little bit better if maybe we had seen Pamela a couple times here or there. Because obviously throughout the OG, you get the red herrings of maybe it's Crazy Ralph. Like, that's the big one. Like, he ends up being in their shed, or I'm sorry, in the pantry.
In the pantry, yeah.
You know, like, so there's these red herrings that it could be someone else. And we've never really met Mrs. Voorhees. But overall, I love the idea of a whodunit. I think that's always one of the best parts of a slasher.
For
You know,
sure.
like with the Scream franchise, Urban Legend, you know, Valentine, these movies that we grew up with in the 90s that are great whodunit slashers. That wouldn't happen without Friday the 13th. So I'm going to go with the OG on this one. This next question, obviously you guys are going to know my answer to it. We're going to talk about the characters.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about the cast, because I think there's great members of the cast in the original and great members of the cast in the remake. But when it comes to the actual characters, do you prefer the original or the remake?
Yeah, the original. The characters in the remake, like you said, they're so cliche. You know, you have the pretty boy who's a douchebag, and they're over the top. The women are, you know, it's
The
just
slutty girl with the perfect nipple placement.
yes, you know, it's just they're over the top and really almost obnoxious. Like, you don't care if they die. Like, you don't care about these characters.
Right.
So yeah, I have to go with the OG ones. You at least care about them. Well, most of them anyway.
I can't think of one character in the OG that I just don't like at all. So I'm going with the OG as well. If it wasn't for Chewie and Lawrence, I don't even think I would like the remake as much. They're comic relief, and I feel like those are real characters. Like, he even says, like, Chewie, when he goes out to the boathouse, and he grabs the liquor, he's like, I knew I had to be friends with Trent for a reason. Like, he acknowledges how much of a douchebag that guy is.
Well, I mean, how could you not?
Right, but every character in the remake is dog shit. Again, not the actors. The actors are fantastic because they do their job, but the characters they're just dog shit. I hate every character in the remake. Now, we do get to see Pamela decapitated in the remake. So, which version of the decapitation do you like more? The version that's in the original or the version that's in the remake?
The original. I mean, that's where it started, and I feel like they did really well with it, you know, practically, and yeah, I have to go with the original.
100% the original. The remake is done during the opening credits, and even as she's being decapitated, there's credits in between while she's... That's so disrespectful to Mrs. Voorhees, man. Like, she's such a great villain. One of my top 5 female villains of all time, just because she's so fucking crazy. Get her, mommy! Get her! You're like, she is just insane. Like, I fucking love her so much. So, I'm definitely going with the original. Now, let's talk about the big bad. You know, do you prefer to see Mrs. Voorhees as the killer in the original or Jason as the killer in the remake?
I do love Mrs. Voorhees, like, you know, like you do, but Jason in the remake, he is such a badass and he's really scary. Like, I would be scared, you know. Part of me feels like I could take on Mrs. Voorhees, but Jason, fuck no. Like, I'm dead. I'm done.
Right.
So...
I'm actually going to go with the remake as well, just because of how badass Jason is. I would say probably 90% of the time I would go with Mrs. Voorhees throughout the other films.
Yeah.
But the Jason in this movie, he runs, he uses a bow and arrow, he throws axes, he uses his machete.
You know,
he's just like, he's a badass. He uses the lights, he knows the way, like the underground tunnels. This Jason is a scary, scary dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of those survivalists you see, like, on TV that are, like, eating worms and shit up in the mountains. Like, that's this Jason. So, we're horror movie fans. We love the kills.
You know it.
So, which kills did you prefer? The kills from the original or the kills from the remake?
Okay, so I want to just say this. The kills from the original are good. You know, there are good ones, you know, somewhat. Like, okay, Kevin Bacon's kill is pretty good. And that one was practical.
Yeah.
But I have to go with the remake. Like I said, that sleeping bag one. And, you know, a lot of them, they're just...
violent.
It's very violent. Like I said, Jason, he is scary. And he's here to fuck you up. Like, he's gonna fuck you up.
I will agree on the remake. I think there's 2 good kills in the original, honestly. You have the Kevin Bacon kill, obviously, and then you have the one of the girl that turns around, and you have the axe hitting her in the face. Besides that, they're all either done off screen, below screen. You don't see them, you just see their bodies later, and that's something I'm not really down with, you know. But in the remake, like you said, you get the sleeping bag kill, which is one of my... Jason has so many great kills with sleeping bags.
Yeah.
Like, he just does. And then, like, the cop kill we talked about earlier. Chewie, when he gets the screwdriver through his neck, and it's just so long and drawn out and painful. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the remake on this one as well. Let's talk about the reason the kids are there. In the OG, you have the kids that are going out. They're going to go clean up the camp so they can restart the camp again. The Christie family's restarting Camp Crystal Lake. Or in the remake, you have a bunch of kids going out, getting drunk, partying at his mom and dad's house.
Yeah. Ask me, 20 years ago, it would have been like, party, but not now. I like it that they're there and, they're cleaning it up. They want to reopen it. They're going to have little campers come back. Yeah. And it just seems, I don't know, like a better reason to be there.
It's not as cliche.
Yeah.
I'm going to the original as well. I love seeing them out there working at the camp. It's actually a good idea. How many movies have we seen where it's got like a bunch of kids going out partying? Right away, you know that there's going to be a douchebag, there's going to be a slut, there's going to be a smart kid, there's going to be the prude. Like, it follows a formula. Cabin in the Woods did it great. But a lot of times it's not done very well. It's very repetitious, and it's just not as much fun for me. So, and maybe it's our age, But I'm going to go with the OG on this one as well. Now let's talk about deaths. We already talked, obviously, about Mrs. Voorhees' decapitation.
Yeah.
In the original. In the remake, you have Jason getting the chain wrapped around his neck. He goes up in and he gets hanged. And then he goes into the wood chipper machine and she stabs him in the chest, delivering one of the stupidest fucking lines of all time. Say hi to mommy in hell is almost as bad as do your thing, cuz, from Texas Chainsaw 3D. So, of those two deaths, which one do you like the most?
Oh, the decapitation of Mrs. Voorhees, for sure. Like, it's awesome. I love that one.
So do I. I think that I'm going to go with the remake, or the original, as well. There's just nothing that beats Mrs. Voorhees' decapitation. That's one of my favorite kills of all time. Just because you have Adrian King, just absolutely wielding that machete. And it was so unexpected as, a younger me watching this movie. And even now, watching it, it looks great with her hands coming up, looking for her own head. I absolutely love it. So I'm going with the original as well. Now, the ending jump scare. I think that, Carrie probably started this violin swelling jump scare. But in the OG, you have her out on the boat and you feel like everything's fine. And then in the remake, they kick his mask in the water. They throw him in the water. They're sitting there and everything's fine. Brother goes to kneel down next to sister. Of the two, which one did you like more?
The original. It gets me every time. It's a great jump scare. And I mean, this is where they started it.
Yeah.
But I feel like they did it so much, like in all of the other ones, like they wanted, that jump scare that you already knew it was going to happen in the remake. Like, you knew this was going to happen. Like, so it made it less scary.
I completely agree, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm going to the original because I didn't expect it at a young age.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments where, and it's baby Jason, little Ari Lehman, the man. He jumps out of the water and he grabs her and he pulls her in. And it's one of those moments that you're watching and you're just like, holy shit, what just happened? And in the remake, you're ready for it. You know it's coming. And it's still Jason. It's him with his mask back on, which is just so... I don't know. It's just so... They've done it so many times throughout this franchise. The only times it was really done amazingly was in part 1 and part 3. When you have Mrs. Voorhees jumping out of the water and grabbing her. I love that one too. But besides that, it's like, okay, guys, we get it.
You know that it's going to happen. He's going to jump out of the water and grab your ass.
Right. So I'm going with the original as well. So for those of you keeping track at home, for the very first time ever, we have the same scores.
Oh, dang.
I gave 6 points to the original, 3 points to the remake.
And I gave 6 to the original and 3 to the remake.
So, obviously, just like always, the points aren't really what matters. It's the quality of the whole film. So, if we're talking about the quality of the whole film, are you preferring the original or the remake?
I have to go with the original. Like I said, there is a lot of pointless times, and it feels really slow, really slow. But I have to go with the characters. I really like the characters, and I love the reveal of Mrs. Voorhees. Like, I just like that more. I do like the Jason in 2009. I think he's scarier, but overall, I have to go with the original.
Okay. Well, and also, very rarely, We agree here too. I'm going with the original on this one. If you would have asked me even a couple months ago, I probably would have said the remake because I hadn't sat down and really watched it in a long time. But sitting down and just rewatching it, doing our notes for this, I realized, like, yeah, the action is great. You know, Jason is amazing. Like, I love Jason. If we could have got some better characters in this movie, and again, this has nothing to do with the actors. The actors did their job. But if the plot and the story could have been a little bit better, I think that this could have been a great, great film. But overall, it's so cut and dry, which is fine, you know, for a slasher. I like the movie. I have a lot of fun with the remake. But the original, like, when I watch it now, I've gone through stages. Like, I used to love it. And then I got to the point where I was like, it's okay. And then we watched it again, and I was like, God, I fucking love this movie. Like, sitting there watching it again, like, I felt like that little boy sitting in front of my TV. And I'm watching all these things that are happening in it again, you know. And, like, I get just as scared when I see Betsy Palmer going, kill her, mommy, kill her. Don't let her get away.
Close up
like,
of her face.
Yes, and she's so unhinged and so crazy. And there's just so much that I love about this. And if we are going to be getting a reboot of the film, like has been announced, if this does go through, because it's been announced before, I really hope they reboot the original.
Yeah.
I hope we can get Mrs. Voorhees again.
We have to get a kick-ass Mrs. Voorhees.
Kathy Bates.
It's honestly, I think that the character that they choose for Pamela Voorhees will make it or break it.
Yeah. Could you imagine, though, Kathy Bates, Toni Collette?
Yeah, my girl Toni.
Like, one of them as Mrs. Voorhees. Like, that would just be absolutely insane.
Absolutely.
So, we do want to thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. Let us know in the comments below. Who is your pick to be the new Mrs. Voorhees? Which do you like better, the original or the remake, and why? So make sure you are also liking this video. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow us on social media so you can stay up to date with everything that we're up to. Until next time, I am Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
Keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.